On this channel, I specialise in making really complex looking images easy to create. So just follow along with my step-by-step tutorial of this painting and you will amaze yourself. Now on this tutorial, it is Christmas focused and I'm going to use some really easy techniques and brushes that come free within Procreate. But having said that, if you're using a different app on a different tablet, you can probably apply quite a few of the techniques and still follow along. But as such, within Procreate, I've opened an A4 canvas which is 297 by 210 millimeters at 300 dpi. In terms of the brushes I'm going to be using within airbrushing, the soft brush and the hard brush. These are all free brushes and I'm going to be using the default settings. Within the charcoals, I'm going to be using the Willow charcoal. And then within the luminance, I'm going to be using the Glimmer brush and the bokeh lights. And then with the colours, I've pre-selected a range of colours here. Each of the colours has what we call a hexadecimal code attached. So if you go to the value section here within the colours, there is a section where you can type in the codes one at a time. And I have provided for accuracy the codes down in the video description, so all you have to do is type them in, press enter, colour appears up here and you can just tap it into your colour palette. One at a time and yeah, you can recreate it. If you want to save some time, next to the codes in the description is a link that takes you to my Patreon page and you can download the colour file there for free. Before we get started, if you like this kind of tutorial, please give this video a thumbs up, hit the subscribe and don't forget the bell notification. And that way you'll be notified of all my future videos too. I'd also like to give thanks to all my Patreon supporters who support me through thick and thin and really have helped me build this channel and keep me motivated to doing these tutorials. So thank you to everyone who has been supporting me recently or over the longer duration. It's made a massive difference, so thank you for that. And with all that said and done, we're going to go to layer one. I'm going to go to my colours and I'm going to start with a black background. So I'm going to drag that colour to flood fill the canvas. But I'm not going to leave it like that for long. I'm going to go to my brushes, airbrushing, soft brush. I'm going to go to my colours, choose the next colour along, which if we go to the colour disc you can see is a reddy orange but brown. I'm going to put it up to about 30% size and about 30% strength, opacity. And I'm just going to start just kind of randomly tapping in, breaking up that dark black colour. I just kind of want a mottled look, really. Tap that in a few times. I don't mind preserving some of the black, letting that remain. I'm going to stay on the same layer, but I am going to move along to the next colour, the third along on the top row. I'm going to stay on the soft brush with an airbrushing. I might just turn it down a little bit, maybe to about the 20%. Stay at the 30% strength, opacity. And now I'm just going to start building in some kind of lighter colours. Again, just mottling this in. This is supposed to represent, I don't know, stuff in the background, things that is so kind of out of focus that we don't really know exactly what it is. You don't need to identify it and that's fine. We might just get perhaps a little bit more of this colour down in the bottom section. We're going to do more of the kind of twinkling lights and bokeh effect near the bottom, so I suppose it's going to push out much of that darkness. Might just create a new layer at this point. You don't need to, but sometimes I just quite like to keep things a little bit separate so we can tweak and adjust things as we go along. So I'm going to move along to the fourth colour this time. Stay on the soft brush with an airbrushing, probably stay at the 20% size and 30% strength, opacity, and just start to tap in just in this slightly lower section, a bit more of this lighter colour. It's going to give a context because I'm going to do the twinkling lights and the bokeh effect here. Stay in the same layer, but I am going to move along to the fifth colour now. And I'm going to reduce the size of that down to about 10%. Keep it at the 30% strength, but I'm just going to just carefully, this time, not quite as randomly, just start to put some slightly larger blobs than the bokeh effect I'm going to add, but yeah, they're subtle, they're just getting in the mix there. There might be one or two that just stick up a little bit, and that's fine, something like that. Might just go back to the third colour on the top row, put it up to the 20% again, still at the same opacity, maybe just bring a bit more of that light down into the bottom section again. Looking at it, I think that it just needs a hint more, and that's working. Create a new layer on top, and I'm going to change the blend mode from normal, and just scroll down to add. So when I add light effects now, it's just going to give it that much more luminance luminosity and really make it vibrant and glow. We're going to change brush to the luminance brushes and the bokeh lights. We're going to change the color back to the 5th color on the top row. Probably going to have the size maybe about 25% and the strength, well, let's put it up to about 80%. And I can quickly just draw a stripe across, maybe go back into it in places, just tap in, further ramp up the effect here and there, and another time across. Then I can go to the adjustments, Gaussian blur, and I'm going to blur that in to about the 10%, create a new layer on top. Again, I'm going to change the blend mode from normal to add, stay on the same brush and the same settings, but I'm just going to start bringing in some slightly sharper focused in the mix here. So adding, letting it accumulate like so. And I'm going to do the same thing again with the blur, but nowhere near as much. So I'm going to go to adjustments, Gaussian blur. I'm going to blur it in maybe to about the 5%. Okay, so I'm going to create a new layer, layer 5. Again, I'm going to change the blend mode from normal to add. I'm going to go to my brushes and go to the glimmer brush this time. In terms of the colors, I'm going to use the 5th color along again. I'm going to put it at 100% size, maybe just a little bit back at about 80% opacity. And I'm really just going to try and aim for the bottom section. So maybe I'll just move the canvas up a little bit, maybe just aim for the bottom line. That seems to be about the right level. And if you want to add just a little bit more here and there, you can do. And I feel like we're just getting a really nice kind of effect there. Having said that, I feel the light's a little bit small, so by zooming out, you can go to the transform and then just enlarge it and move it, play around with it, see where it looks the best to your eye, and we can have it live there. I'm going to go to the adjustments, Gaussian blur, and blur it in, soften it in a little bit, so it's a little bit too sharp. I'm going to have it to about the 5%, maybe a touch less, 4% might work. Okay, I'm just going to go maybe backwards a little bit, back to layer 1, perhaps go in with some of these green colours and add just a hint of that. Maybe we're in a setting where we have a Christmas tree or some kind of display that has greenery. There's no harm in going back in, but obviously I need to go back to the airbrushing, use the soft brush. Still should be set to what we used it previously, so it's 20% size, 30% opacity, and I just want to start bringing in a hint more green here and there. So again, we're still on layer 1, maybe just at an edge. You decide. And we've got a more vibrant green at the very end that we could use as well. I don't want to overdo this, but I just want a hint of it coming in there. I don't think really Christmas scenes kind of work without the hint of that greenery, and probably some more vibrant reds coming in later as well. In fact, we could go to the vibrant red on the bottom row. We could even just add a hint of that in. Not too much though, we don't want to overpower the other effects, like that's too much. Just a hint, like so. Okay, so I'm going to go to the very top layer and create a new layer. And we're not going to be subtle with this, we're going to go for something pretty central. But I'm going to change brush from the soft brush with an airbrushing to the hard brush. And you can see here with the visualization the size of the circle. So according to the A4 canvas, I feel that somewhere around the 70% will look good. So I'm going to choose a colour. I'm going to choose the black to begin with because I'm going to add colours on top of it. So we're going to add with the base foundation colour of the dark colour, 100% opacity, and I'm just going to find, locate where I'm going to put it and just tap it in a few times like this. Doesn't matter if the edges have kind of blurred out, misplaced, misaligned a little bit, it's kind of ghosted, because I'm then going to go to the adjustments, Gaussian blur, blur it in to about the 3%. I'm going to go to the layer and put on alpha lock. And that means now when I use any other kind of brush, so for example, I'm going to use the charcoals, the willow charcoal. I could choose, just for demonstration purposes, a bright red. Put the brush down and the opacity up, and I could go right across it, and it's only going to add this colour to the actual bauble, which is great. But you can see as I'm adding it, because it wasn't full black, it has a translucency. Go back to the layer that has the bauble and duplicate it. And if you need to, still a bit translucent, duplicate it again. And that pretty much does the trick. Then I'm going to tap on the layer, merge down, tap on it again, merge down, and we've got everything on one pretty solid black colour. And again, it has a slightly softened edge because when you do photography, you tend not to get on a sphere a really sharp, focus on every part of the sphere. If you're focused on the middle part, therefore the nearest section, then the depth of field is going to be usually a bit more shallow on close-up photography, so you're going to get a slight blurring around the edge. I'm just going to turn off the alpha lock for a moment. We will put it back on because we're going to go to the smudge tool and we're going to put it on the hard brush again. I'm going to put it at about 3% size and 100% opacity, and I'm just going to, near the top, start to just sculpt up the section. Obviously it's a bauble, so it needs to be attached. You always get this section where you've got a little string or wire to attach it to something. So just push it up, trying to shape it, and then when you get to the top edge, try and flatten it out like so. There's not much of this tutorial that requires a lot of actual painting and sculpting of shapes, so this is the one little detail that perhaps just needs a little bit of care putting into this aspect. And if you need to go perhaps to the black and your brushes, airbrushing, hard brush, and just go in there with a small size, so maybe the 3%, 100% opacity, and just go in and maybe just draw the shape in if needed. Zoom in just a little bit. We don't want a super sharp edge to contrast too much with all the other things that we've done. Again, go back to the smudge. Try and rely on the smudge. It's going to give you a softer look than applying with the brush. Then with that hard brush, just turn it down to maybe the lowest part of 2%, maybe about 75% opacity. Maybe draw a little ring and a string that goes up to. Pretty easy stuff. Then we'll go back to that layer, tap on it, turn back on the alpha lock. You can tell it's activated because we have a little grid. And the really satisfying bit now, if we go back to the charcoals, the willow charcoal, and perhaps with the red colour initially, I'm going to put the size, I don't know, about 15% size, doesn't have to be very small, and about 50% opacity. Now remember, if you press on hard, then you're going to get a much stronger colour, but if you press on lightly, you're going to get, well, a significantly reduced effect. So initially, I'm just going to start by building in some of this colour. You can just start quite tentatively initially. Start building it up. Imagine where you want the light to be making contact. We're going to have a large section at the bottom that is really getting illuminated, obviously by the lights that are underneath, so we can really spend some time concentrating on this bottom bit. Add some really nice light that's making contact. Then maybe we reduce it down, put it at 5%. There might just be some sections here that are just touching the very edges. I think that's very important because it just helps describe it as a sphere, as a ball shape. You're going to get light that's making contact on the rear side, and it's just going to lightly touch the edges. Probably need to do this on both sides really, considering we've got light that's pretty much universally around the whole shape. And we can bring out the edges of the attachment at the top as well, not as much. Maybe just a hint more towards the top. There might be more lights that are in the upper areas that are just reflecting bits back. Again, we don't need to see, we're not going to do an absolutely crystal clear shiny bauble here, so you're not going to see the exact details of the room. With a slightly frosted look, so it's a bit more matte, but it's still going to get a shine. Okay, I'm going to stay on the same layer. I'm just going to switch to the orange next to it, and I can just start to, within the red areas especially, start to add in some more mottled look, texture. And when I get to that bottom edge, just bleach that out a little bit more as well. I don't want to lose the edge, but certainly it's going to become a little softened in by the impact of the lights that are probably below it. And again, I'll just sort of feed it in around the edge a little bit, not all the way up to the top, maybe just increase it, a bit more going on, perhaps in an upper area here too. Okay, let's switch to the third colour this time, why not? Again, back down, 5%, and I've not changed the opacity, it's still at 50%, it's pretty strong, it's more than strong enough. But I could just start to add perhaps just some points. I don't want it to be too sharp, but some mottling I think is going to work. If I'm not careful, it's going to look too much like a mirror reflection of the lights, so I don't want them to be too specific. And if you feel like they are getting a bit specific, we have the alpha lock on, so you could easily just go to the adjustments, Gaussian blur. If you feel like you're being a bit too sharp, you are going to lose some of the charcoal texture, but you can always go back over it and you can soften it in like so. I don't feel I need to do that just yet, but you could. Move along my colours to the yellow colour this time. And again, hints of that in the mix. And of course, well, one of the main colours we used was this colour at the top. So the fifth colour on the top. And well, I suppose we should start really bringing that colour in too. It's going to help reflect back the colours that are in the background. Now, admittedly, the settings for this layer is normal blend mode rather than the add, so it's not going to be quite as luminous, but that's a good thing. This is reflected light rather than the light itself, so it's better that it's not quite as vibrant. And maybe I'll just ramp up the light on this edge. I feel like, you know, there's no harm in having a strong light source that's just coming from the edge here as well. Again, it just gives it a difference. If it's too uniform, it's not going to look quite as 3D. It's going to look a little bit flat, so change it up a little bit. Again, bleach it out down in the bottom region to some extent, but you don't want to lose the actual bauble shape. We can add, I suppose, some sharper highlights here and there. I think I'm probably going to add some real shine to this section, so I'm going to turn it up to about 15% and really start to build in a stronger shine here. Ramp it up a little bit. Again, it's heading towards that kind of mirror-like shine, which, I don't know, is to a certain extent, I don't mind that. I don't want to overdo it though. I'll keep it a little bit softer than a complete mirror look. But I think we're really starting to capture that sense that we're reflecting the environment. And that's the main thing really. It needs to respond to the things that you've got surrounding it and give an impression that it's reflecting things. I might just create a new layer on top this time. I'm going to change the blend mode to add again. And I am going to use this colour that was used for the background, but I'm going to turn it down to about 3% size, keep it at the 50% opacity, which is really going to be quite powerful. But it just helps bring out a real sense of light reflected here. And again, we probably just can create some sort of more shine here at the bottom as well. And you can take it to as shiny as you like. You can keep it quite matte and grainy, or you could keep pushing it and create that kind of mirrored look. And the more kind of pinpoints of light, I think it is starting to push it to more that mirror look. And it wasn't my intention initially, but the more I do it, the more I kind of like it. So why not? Okay, I think that's generally starting to bring it all together and work quite nicely. Having said that, we need to do something with that top little fastener attachment. So I'm going to go perhaps to the third colour on the top row. I will probably need to go back to the airbrushing soft brush. I don't want this to have the same grain that the bauble did. So I'm going to turn that down to about the 2% size and low on the opacity at around 20%. I'm going to go back to layer 6 for this, which has the alpha lock switched on. And I'm just going to build in a little bit of this kind of, I guess it would be metal, wouldn't it, typically? And again, it's going to be round, so there's going to be some sections that reflect more light than other bits. I feel like I've overdone that a little bit. So perhaps I'll go in with the darker colour, the black, just to soften in that edge a little bit more again. Maybe with the fifth colour along again, just at the top edge, and then that side as well. I don't want to do too much of that. I don't want to spend too long on it. Perhaps just a hint of the metal thing attached to it that's reflecting the light as well. Again, it's subtle, and that's fine. Just turn it down, add a hint more. Again, going with the black. Maybe it should have its own little shadow that separates it from the bauble. Again, don't spend too long on that, but we can add things to it. So I have created a bit of a message to go on there, Merry Christmas message. So I'm going to add that from my pictures, insert a photo, and obviously it's on a white background. So I'm going to go to the layer, put it on the very top first of all, change the blend mode from normal, and I'm going to scroll down, and I've actually found that the divide blend mode is quite a good one for this task. So we'll leave it on that, but we need to make it fit. So go to the transform, and we're going to reduce it down to a size that will work, like so. But I feel like it doesn't quite, it looks a bit flat. It doesn't kind of resemble, it doesn't fit in with the roundness of the shape. So I'm going to go to the adjustments, liquify. I'm going to put the size up to 70%, pressure up to max, distortion on none, and momentum on none. And I'm going to go to the center of the shape and tap and hold it, just a hint. And I feel like it's just pushed it around the bauble a little bit better. I'm going to go to the layer, tap on that symbol and turn the opacity of it down because we're losing something of the bauble. So I'll put it maybe at around, well, not 100%, but a bit back from that. So maybe about 70%, maybe a bit less, maybe about 60%. But I'm also going to duplicate the layer. So that initially pushes it back up overall. But on the top layer, I can go in with the eraser. I'm going to put the eraser on the soft brush, put it somewhere around, I don't know, 5%, 50% opacity. And I can just start to think, where should the shadowed areas be? Where is going to be less vibrant? Where you're going to see less light lighting up the white? So you can just subdue it slightly in areas that perhaps are not going to catch as much of the light. I mean, the whole scene is fairly illuminated, but you can see I can just concentrate some of the bright to the top area, and it just really makes it kind of fit in with the overall scene a bit better. It gives it a 3D-ness, makes it look like it's writing that could actually be attached to that object. And again, you can go back in with the bottom one and you can adjust that as much as you want. If you want it to be, you know, slightly less realistic, but just clearer with the message, then you can do that. Or you can turn it down and have it at the level that you think works best. So I put it at 60%. I think I stand by that. I think that works. Now we could go to the bauble itself and we could duplicate it, go to the one that's underneath, and we can go to the transform and we can move that somewhere else in our scene. And obviously we can change the scale, play around with it, have it so it's behind and overlapping a little bit. But we need to remember, because it is a duplication, we need to turn the alpha lock off. So we tap on it, turn the alpha lock off, go to the adjustments, Gaussian blur, and we can blur that in and just push it further back into the environment and make it seem like it actually works better. And we could do that a few times. So we could take that one now and duplicate it. Again, move it to wherever we want in our scene. Maybe make it a touch smaller to really push it further back. Again, adjustments, Gaussian blur, blur it in even more. Again, because it's further back than this one. And we're just starting to create that sense of depth with them, which is something quite effective. Again, duplicate it, and you can just keep repeating this process. So you can move that further back. I guess you just need to make sure that it goes at the bottom. Again, go back to the moving it around, reduce it in scale, adjustments, Gaussian blur, blur it in even more. Yeah, and you're just creating a series of different baubles, and that can work really well too. Okay, and I think that pretty much creates the overall effect. Obviously on one or two of them, if you wanted to go in, and obviously it's getting a bit confused now, so we could easily pinch all of those layers together. I'm going to perhaps preserve the top one as a separate layer, but I'm going to pinch all the other background ones together like so. I can turn on the alpha lock again. Maybe on this layer, now that it's all merged down and we have alpha lock on, we can go back in with something like the soft airbrush with our colors. So we can choose a bright color. Might go in with a fifth color along to begin with, and I don't know, 5% size, 20% opacity, and just for one or two of them, I can just tweak the lighting to kind of reflect where it is in position to other things. It's not going to be exactly the same kind of lighting conditions that impact the one at the very front. So we can show that, we can impact that differently. Going with maybe the orange, just bringing a hint more, slightly different things into each one of these. I don't want to overdo it because I do want to keep them pushed into the background, but yeah, just a hint different. Okay, we're nearly there. I'm just going to go to the very top and add a layer on top. I'm going to change the blend mode to add, and with the soft brush with an airbrushing rather, I'm going to go to the white. I'm going to put it at, well, about 15% size and about 20% opacity, and just on this point of light, I'm just going to tap it a few times just to really bring in a shine. Don't want to distort it too much. Maybe I'll turn it up 25% and do another tap there and another one. You decide what level is going to look good for your taste. Turn it back down, 10%, maybe I could add just for this one here perhaps. There you go. Okay, I hope you've enjoyed watching this tutorial. Please give this video a thumbs up, hit the subscribe, and don't forget that bell notification if you haven't done already. I hope you have a fantastic festive period, holiday, Christmas, whatever it is you celebrate. I hope you have a fantastic this time of the year anyway. Thanks for watching. I shall catch you back here soon. Bye for now.